Hello everyone. So this is a part of a new series that we have started on the channel where I'm going to actually code an end-to-end project using Node.js in the backend and Express.js as the framework. The core competency of this particular project is going to make sure that if you are somebody who is at the very beginner to intermediate level on backend engineering, then you are able to understand how to structure an end-to-end completeness of the project. We are going to code a movie booking application. The database under consideration is going to be MongoDB. It's going to be a fun project where I will talk about a lot of interesting details around the API development of this particular backend project. Once done, you will be able to have an end-to-end working solution, and I would say maybe you can also try to code I would say front end on top of it so that you can have an end-to-end full stack application. But we are going to talk about the backend aspect of the things. The cool part about this project is going to be that we are going to focus on a lot of interesting details around the booking flow of a particular movie inside this movie booking application. So without any further ado, let's just start. But before starting the video, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, do consider subscribing to the channel because we are going to put some really awesome content coming up ahead regarding tech and career in tech. Also, if you have not yet checked out the channel of Algocamp, do check it out because we are putting some really awesome tutorials around data structures and algorithms there as well. So let's just start.
If you will carefully see, we already have this routes file set up with us, and we already have this service file set up with us, and we already have this controller. The API now that we want to write is to get a particular theater. That is, we will pass the theater ID, and based on that theater ID, whatever theater is present, we want to fetch the data of that theater, right? So let's just see how the API will look like. For example, the signature of the API, the route, the HTTP request type, the request body, response body, all of these things, how it looks like. Let's just start. So first of all, let's just talk about the route of the request. Okay. So the route of the request is going to be /MBA, that is for movie booking application, /API, because it's an API based route, /V1, it's the version 1 of the API, /theaters. So theater is going to be the resource on which we want to do some operation, and then we can say :ID, right? So now you might be thinking that this same route was there for delete also. If you will see the delete route, the route was same, and we have already discussed this in the movie resource that there can be a case that multiple different APIs have same routes, but we can differentiate by one more factor: the type of the request, because using the type and the route we are able to identify one type of API. So the type of the API is going to be get. It will be a get API or a get request. Then if we talk about the request body, then we just want to fetch if there is any movie with a particular given ID. So we don't need to send anything in the
So let's just start the video.
request body. So request body will be empty. And if we talk about the response body, in the response body, we are going to have a success parameter. This is going to tell us whether the API is successfully completed or not. It will be true if the API completed itself successfully. It will be false otherwise. we will be having an error parameter that will be an empty object if there is no error. For example, we were able to successfully do everything in the API. In that case, there won't be any kind of error, so it will be an empty object. Otherwise, inside this error, we will be having the details of the error that we actually got. Then we are going to have a data property. This data property will be empty if an empty object kind of a thing if there was an error occurred during the processing of the request. Otherwise, this will be actually having the original data that we want to send to the user who requested the data through the API. And then we'll be having a message parameter that will be custom based on the fact that whether there was any error or success or not. So this can be the overall definition of the API that we want to have, right? Now with this definition in hand, let's just try to start the implementation of the corresponding API. So you guys already know the drill, right? What we can do is we can start writing a service, right? We can start writing a service. So we can say const get theater, and this method should be an asynchronous method because we are going to make a database call here. So let's keep a fat arrow function, and we are going to pass an ID. We'll be given an ID, right? ID, or let's write it here. We can even add some comments, right? So this will be a theater ID, or let's write it here. ID is the unique ID based on which we will fetch a theater, or you can say it is the unique ID based on which we will fetch a theater, right? So what we can say is that const response is equals to await. We can say theater dot, there is a function find by ID. You can also do find one, and you can pass ID colon this ID, but you can also directly do find by ID. It already takes the ID parameter. And if there was no response, right, that is no element or no record found for the given ID, we are going to return a custom error object which will be having the details of the I would say error, that is no theater found for the given ID, right? And the status code that we can use can be 404, not found, right? So what we did was we will try to fetch the theater based on the given ID. If we are not able to find the theater, we are going to say it's a 404 not found. The theater that you're trying to find for the given ID doesn't exist, something like this. But if there was a response, that means we were able to fetch a theater. In that case, we are going to return theater, okay? Or sorry, we'll return a response. And what we can do, we can bind it inside a try catch. Let's bind it inside a try catch, and we will throw the error from here as well, but we will also try to do console.log the error, right? So if due to any other issue, for example, like we are not able to connect to the database or something like that, if we face any issue or we encounter any issue, in that case we can throw an error directly, right? Now what we can do is we can export this get theater method. So now our service method is ready, we have exported it. We can add comments to the other functions later maybe. For the timing, let's just go to the controller, and in the controller now we have to actually write a get theater function. So we can say const get theater, it will be also an asynchronous request because we are actually going to call the service, and service is internally calling an asynchronous function which is coming from the models. So this should also be an asynchronous method. it will take the parameter as the HTTP request object, right? There will be this HTTP request object in the parameter, and there will be HTTP response object as well. We will bind the whole function inside a try catch, and we'll say const response is equals to await, because theater service dot get theater is a asynchronous method, so it's already going to return a promise. We have to consume it with await. So we'll say theater service dot get theater, right? And we are going to pass the ID. Now if you see the signature of the API, we are passing the ID in the URL params. How can we access the URL params? We can say request.params.id. Once we have received the response, we can check if the response is having an error parameter, that is the response object that we got is having actually an error, right? In that case, we have to build an error response body. So we'll say error response body. We are getting this error response body from the response body util. Dot error is equals to, we'll set the response dot error, and then we can say return the response dot status. So the status code we are going to get again from the response dot code dot JSON, and we can pass the whole error response body, right? So if there was any error in the response, we are going to actually detect the error, store that error in the error response body, and return the error response body as a response. Otherwise, we have to build the success response body. So we'll say success response body dot data is equals to response, right? And then we can say success response body dot message successfully fetched the data of the theater. And here we can just directly do error response body dot error is equals to error. So whatever error our service is going to throw, we are going to catch that error here, and then we are going to say return rest dot status 500, that is internal server error dot JSON error response body. And that's it. We are going to just export this theater method, get theater method, and we can come here, right? And we can say app dot get /MBA /API /v1 /theaters /:ID, and we can map it to the theater controller dot get theater, and that's it. So we have successfully made our service method, called that service method successfully in the controller, and then called the controller using the route. So we have registered the route as well. Let's see if we are running the server already. Yes, we are already running the server. So now what we can do is, let's go to Postman, right? And let's make it a get request. And on the theaters, what we can do, these are the theaters. Let's try to make a get request to this theater ID. Send. Okay, my bad. This is theaters. Okay, there is some issue here. I guess the request is getting halt. Let's see. So this is the get request, makes sense. Then in the get request, oh my bad. So in case of success, we have not returned rest.status 200 .json success response body. We were not returning the success response body here. Let's try again. Okay, so now we are able to successfully fetch the data, and instead of 3, if you make 8, send. No theater found for the given ID, 404 not found, right? So technically, if you see, we have successfully implemented our get API. Let's just make a quick commit. We can say get status, So we made changes in the services file, made changes in the controller file and the routes file. We can say git add all, git commit -m, added get theater API, git push origin, right? And we have successfully pushed it on the GitHub, right? If you open GitHub, let's go to feature 2 and let's go to all the commits. You can see here in the commit we have our added get theater API change. You can just take a quick look at it. This is the service function. We made a service function. In the service we are actually just calling the model method. If you're not getting any response, that means no data was there with the corresponding ID. We are registering our controller in the routes here, and you can see in the controller we are calling our service. If the service threw an error, then we are going to say response.error, right? Otherwise we are going to prepare a success response body. Otherwise we are going to give it a 500 status code, right? So that makes our get API ready. Now technically we can do one more thing that will make our controllers in both movie and theater much more cleaner. Currently, if let's say service is handling any error, so instead of returning this error, we can even throw this error, right? We can just do a throw, and this we can throw this error object. That complete error object we can fetch here, right? That complete error object we can fetch here, right? So instead of doing response.error like this, we can actually throw the error from there, and inside the catch only we are going to handle all the error response body. So we have all of our errors segregated at one place. So this is an activity that we are going to do later that is going to help us to clean up the code even more, right? When I will start doing it, then you will get a better understanding of what we want to do. So that was it for this part. I hope you guys were able to understand how to build a get API for a resource like theater. Technically speaking, now we have to start developing an API that can help us to fetch all the theaters, right? So the API that we are going to talk about will be extended in the next part as well, right? But currently we are going to write a very basic version of it. So the agenda of this API will be to fetch all the theaters, to fetch all the theaters, right? The route that we are going to use will be something like /MBA /API, because it's an API based route, of course, /v1 because it's the version 1 of the API, /theaters, right? Now if you carefully remember, then a similar route was there also for the creation of the theaters, right? When we were writing the API that helped us to create the theaters, in that case also we were having similar route. Let me show you. So if you will go to theater routes.js, you can see /MBA /API /v1 /theaters. It used to create a theater, but the difference was the type of the request was post. If for this kind of a route, if we keep the type of the request as post, then it will mean that we want to actually create new theater, and the details of the new theater is going to be sent in the request body. But this time the type of the request we are going to keep as get. The type of the request we are going to keep as get. So if it will be a get request, then it will help us to fetch all the theaters, and the request body can be empty because we don't want to send any particular data, and the response body will be having the following 4 parameters. The first parameter will be a success parameter that is going to help us to define the fact that whether the API is successfully completed or not. It will be true if the API completed itself successfully, all the work it is expected to be done, it completed successfully. Otherwise false. And then we will be having an error object, which will be an empty object if there is no error, that is no error was thrown, any error like due to client side error or server side error, anything didn't go wrong, then it will be an empty object. Otherwise it will be having the details of the errors. After that we'll be having a data object. If due to some reason there was some error in the overall process and we were not able to complete our operation, this data object will be empty, otherwise it will be having the corresponding object, and there will be a message. So based on whatever situation we are into, any error or the completion, whatever situation we are at, the error also can be client side, server side. Depending on that, the messages can differ. And apart from that, we'll be having also our HTTP status code as well, depending on the situation, whether the API hit everything successfully or not. So this will be the overall signature that we are going to follow in order to build the API, right? So now let's just start coding this. First of all, we need to go to the theater service and we need to write a function const get all theaters, right? We are going to have an asynchronous function. Currently I'll keep this function empty, right? So get all theaters is going to fetch all the theaters. So we'll say try catch error. If there is any error, we'll do console.log error and then we'll throw the error. Otherwise, we'll say const response is equals to await theater dot find, and inside the find function we can pass an empty object. This can help us to fetch all the theaters, right? This find function is kind of very powerful. If we pass this object as an empty object, it will give us all the theaters. If we will pass some custom parameters in this object, then it can help us to filter our corresponding model as well, that we are going to discuss later. After that, we can just do return response, right? And we can export get all theaters. Okay, so we have exported it. Now our service is ready. Our service is technically ready, at least for the basic part. Now we can go to theater controller and we can say const get theaters. This function is also going to be an asynchronous function because internally it is going to consume a promise. We can have the access to the HTTP request object and the HTTP response object. We are going to bind it inside a block of try catch. If we found any error, then we can say error response body dot error is equals to error, and then we can say return res dot status 500 dot json error response body. So if we get any error that is going to be a server side error, then we will say we'll return the status as 500 and error response body will be having the corresponding error. Otherwise, we'll say const response is equals to await theater service dot get all theaters, right? We don't need to pass any object here, and we can say success response body dot data is equals to response, and then we can say return, or let's do one thing, success response body dot message is equals to successfully fetched all the theaters, and then we can say return res dot status, that is the response object, and we will set the status as 200 because the request went perfectly fine, dot json, and this will be success response body. This can be done. So we are ready with our theater controller. We can export this theater controller here, and now we need to catch it inside the routes. So I'm going to register one more route. The type of the route is going to be get. So let's register the route. So we can say slash mba slash api slash v1 slash theaters slash Okay, this one should be good, and we can say theater controller dot get theaters. Okay, this can help us to register this route as well, and let's check if the server is running. Yes, server is still running. Let's try to make a request from Postman. So we don't need this id slash mba slash api slash v1 slash theaters. It's a get request, send it. Okay, so we are getting an array of all the theaters. You can see this, right? We are getting an array of all the theaters, and this is working absolutely fine, right? We have only one theater here. That's correct. So let's just make a quick commit of it. We'll write git commit -m added get all theater api git push. Right, so we have successfully pushed it on GitHub as well. So now we are ready with our get all theater API, right? But we have to extend its functionality also, because generally when we have to get all the get the details of everything, then we can also apply some filters. For example, we just want to get the first 10 or the first 20, or we just want to get all the theaters of a particular city. We just want to get all the theaters of a particular pin code, and so on and so forth. These kind of details we need, right? So in the later set of like the series, in the upcoming parts, we are going to also implement filters in this API. That is going to be really very interesting, because we are going to build a lot of custom filters that are going to help us to build up the overall I would say application. So I hope the overall logic to implement the get all kind of an API is clear to everyone. Past few parts, we have already started preparing about the theater model. We have also started preparation, like we also didn't only start, but we also completed um, the create API for the theater resource. If you will go to the controller, you can see there is a new method create that is going to help us to create a theater, right? This is something really very interesting. We were able to successfully create theaters in our database. The API was working fine. You can even see this here. If you refresh, we were able to create multiple theaters with all the corresponding properties that we at least feel that is good for the initial part, right? In the initial state, when the theaters are not directly currently related to the movies, it's good for the preparation of the CRUD, right? Now we have to continue our discussion, and we have to write few more APIs that will help us to actually concrete our structure of the theater resource. So without any further delay, let's just start and try to write few more APIs that we can have. Okay, so the first API that we are going to write is going to be for the deletion of the theater, right? So what we can do is um, we can first of all write a service function. We'll say const delete theater, right? And we have to see what kind of signature and syntax we are expecting to build. So first of all, let's just try to understand what will be the type of the request and everything for the delete request. So let me open the iPad screen. So let's just start writing about the route and the type of the request and the other details. So first of all, let's talk about the route. So how the API route is going to look like. So we are going to have something like slash MBA slash API slash V1 slash theaters, and because we have to delete it, we are going to pass a theater ID, right? Whatever theater ID we are going to pass here, it is going to be a variable parameter, and we are going to pass it as a URL param. So this is a URL param, and whatever will be the corresponding ID of like whatever data we will find such that the primary key is this ID, we want to delete that, right? So we can write it here based on this id we will identify the record to be deleted. This is the major REST convention, right? And if you talk about the type of the request, I guess that is pretty straightforward. The type of the request is going to be a delete request, right? Then if you talk about the request body, then we don't want anything in the request body. It is going to be empty, right? But in the response body, we are going to have a success parameter that is going to tell us about the fact that whether the API is successfully hit or not, or we were able to get the desired action done or not. There will be an error object which will be empty if there was no error, otherwise it will be containing some error. There will be a data property that will be an empty object if there was no data found because we encountered an error. In that case, we are going to have this data, and we are going to have something like message. This message will be based on the fact that whether we were able to successfully complete the action or not, because based on that we are going to actually write some custom messaging here, right? Okay, so let's just see. So now we have our overall signature of the API ready, right? Now we have to think about the fact that how can we handle this thing. Okay, so this is a good time that we can start the preparation for the delete movie API, right? So in the service, we are going to get actually the ID of the theater that we want to delete, right? Because based on this ID only, we are going to uniquely identify what theater to get to be deleted. Okay, cool. So here what we can do is we can do something like, let's bind it inside a try catch, and we can say const response is equals to await. This should be an asynchronous function to use await inside, and we need to do theater dot find by id and delete, and we are going to pass this id, right? At last we are going to return this response. If we found any error, we'll say console.log error, and we are going to throw the error. Okay, so currently we are done with this basic method call, right? We can just export delete theater, right? Okay, oh my bad, I guess I wrote it inside the middleware's file. Let's remove it from here. This was the middleware file. Let's not make any changes here. We need to go to theater service. Okay, here we wanted to have it. Okay, so delete theater is here, and we are going to actually export delete theater. Okay, cool. Now if you go to theater controller, we are going to write a function const delete, which will be an asynchronous request. It will get the access to the request object and the response object. Okay, our delete is not allowed, so let's make it destroy. Okay, something like this. Now again we are going to bind it inside a bunch of try catch, and we can say const response is equals to, we'll call the theater service dot delete theater, and we are going to get the data inside the URL params. So how can we access the URL params? We can say request dot params dot id. This will help us to get the access to the URL params. And then what we are going to do, we'll say success response body dot data is equals to response, success response body dot message is equals to successfully deleted the given theater, and we can say return rest.status 200.json success response body, right? So this will help us to build up the success response body. If we were able to complete the call, we'll get it. Otherwise, we'll say error response body dot error is equals to the given error, and we'll say return response, the HTTP response object dot status as 500, that is internal server error. This rest.status returns us the response object again. On that response object, I can do .json, and we can do error response body, and this .json function also returns the response object only. And then we can just copy this and paste it here, right? Cool. So we are done with the controller implementation for the delete. Now let's go to the route and try to register a route. So we'll say app.delete. We'll mention the route as /mba/api/theaters/:id. This will be the theater ID, and we can say theater controller dot destroy. Okay, so we have successfully registered our route as well. So let's see if the server is running. Server is running, yes. Let's do one thing. Let's get ID of one of the theaters. Let's get ID of this theater. Let's make it a delete request. We don't want body anymore, and we'll say /ID. If you send the request, you can see you have successfully deleted the given theater. If you refresh, this theater is gone, right? Now let's do one thing. Let's try to create the theater again. So we'll make a post request, and we'll create the theater again. Sorry, my bad. We'll create the theater again, right? If you refresh, we got the theater. Now let's say we wanted to delete this theater again, but this time by mistake we gave a wrong ID. Instead of 3, let's say it is a 2. We gave a wrong ID. If you send the request, it still says successfully deleted the given theater, but technically no theater was deleted because there was no such theater for the given ID, right? And we have to handle this. So how can we handle it? Let's go to the service, right? And let's do console.log response. Okay, let's try to delete the theater again. Send, and it gives the response as null. So this is what we have to give a check of. So we'll say if not response. If we don't get any response, we are going to return an error object, which is going to say no record of a theater found for the given ID, and the error code that we are going to return is 404 not found, right? This is something really very important. I believe in the movie resource also we didn't do this. Technically we should handle it. In the next parts we can handle it. But if now you will go to theater controller, now in the response you can even receive an error. So we can say if response.error, then we need to handle the error response body. Dot error is equals to response.error. We can say error response body dot message is equals to, or let's not write the message, let's just directly return the response. So we can say return rest.status response.code.json error response body. Okay, that is if the service layer is throwing an error, or let's say returning an object which is technically an error, then what we should do, we should handle that error separately. Otherwise we should return the success object only. So now if you try again, okay, so it's still returning that response. Let's see what's the issue. So we have saved the files, I guess. Theater service. Console.log response, comma, not response. Let's see. Let's send. Okay. We are returning this object here. Right. This is an await call. Okay, my bad. This should also be an await call, right? Because otherwise this response will be a promise and we will move ahead. That should not be the case. So we need to put a await here. Now if you will try, so you can see 404 not found, no record of a theater found for the given ID. That's it, something went wrong. We cannot process the request. And the error, like the issue was, uh, it's a promise based syntax, so we need to use a await here when we are actually calling the theater service also, because it's an async function. Whenever you put a function as an async function, it by default returns a promise. Doesn't matter whether you want to return a promise or not, it will automatically find your object, return object inside a promise. So this is good. This is good, I believe. And let's see. We can remove this console.log and we are ready with our corresponding delete API. Right. Now let's just try to have the delete API actually delete some record. You can see successfully deleted the given theater. If you try again with the same ID, no theater found for the given record. So this was one corner case that we have to handle, right? We can just quickly commit this. We can say git add all, git commit -m, implemented the delete API for theater resource, git push origin feature 2, and we have successfully pushed the code. If you will look at the final implementation that we have done, you can just open the movie booking API node. This is the URL. You can just click on this drop down, go to feature 2, and you can look at the last commit that we have done, implemented the delete API theater resource. You can open it and you can see all we did was we wrote a controller function that is for the destroy API, right? We wrote this controller function. This is just actually calling the theater service. If the theater service is returning an error, we are just handling that error. Otherwise, if it's an internal server error that theater service is not handling, then we are actually calling internal server error. Then we registered our API in the corresponding routes that we did. And for the delete theater as well, we have a service return that is actually calling the model function find by ID and delete. What find by ID and delete does is it actually finds the record by the given ID and actually then deletes the record. That is really very helpful, right? And if we didn't find any record, we are handling it here. So we are going to return an error object. Otherwise, if something other went wrong, for example, you are not able to make the database connection or something else happened, then in that case, we are going to throw an internal server error. And that's it. This is the only change that we have to do in order to build the delete API. Technically, in the previous part, we already saw that if we want to delete a theater, we were actually passing this ID. This ID we were getting from the URL params. You can see request.params.id. Now the thing is, what we handled was, if for that corresponding ID, let's say somebody gave you an ID to delete a record and that record was never present, what to do in that case? So in that case, we are going to return 404 not found, that the client is sending a wrong ID that is not even present in our database. We have to handle the same thing for movie service also, because in movie service, if you will see, we have implemented the delete movie service, which is just by default calling the model function find by ID and delete. This movie service is directly getting consumed in the movie controller. You can see in the delete movie, we are just directly consuming the movie service, right? Now, what if the same case occurs that just like theater, if the theater ID is not present and we want to delete it, we should not allow it. In the same manner, if a movie is not present and we are sending a request to actually delete it, it should not get processed. This is something that we want to handle, and we are going to handle that in this part. So let's just start. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to go to the movie service. Currently what's happening, we are just calling the model function. What I will do is I will bind it inside a try catch. We can say console.log error, and we can just throw the error again from here. Okay, now here what I will say is, if the response is null, then we are going to return a custom object that will be having an error. This error will be no movie record found for the ID provided, and the code that we want to pass is 404, that is not found. So if we are not able to find a corresponding movie, we'll set this as the error and we are going to return the code as 404. Then we can go to movie controller. In the movie controller, currently we are just directly getting this response. Let's handle it. So we can say if response object is having an error key, then we have to build up the error response body. So we'll say error response body dot error is equals to response dot error, and we can say return res dot status error response body, res dot status error response not error response body dot code, response dot code, because this code that we are sending from the movie service, this code property is going to be received inside this response object, right? So that response object dot code dot json error response body, right? This is something going to be helpful. Otherwise we can set up other things, right? We can successfully return a response body, and that can also be one part. So let's just try to delete a movie which is not even actually present. So let's go to movies, let's take any ID /movies and let's make it 1. If we try to send it, it says 404 not found, no record found for the given movie. And I believe this should be it. Let's just quickly commit this. We'll add all the files, git commit -m. Let's write it as a fix the delete API for movies, right? We'll say fix the delete API for movies, and we'll say git push origin master, not master, feature 2, right? So we have successfully pushed our code on GitHub as well, and I hope this logic where we are actually checking the fact that somebody should not be able to delete a resource that is not even present is clear to everyone. So let's just put the commit message as let's see. So we added validation middleware, right? So let's put theater create API validators added, git push origin and the branch name, right? So we have successfully pushed our code as well. And if you will just go to the GitHub repository, and if you will select the corresponding feature 2 branch, because everything after feature 1 we are building in feature 2. So this feature 2 branch, if you will see and go to commits, you can see theater create API validators added is there, and we didn't do much changes, right? All we did was just adding this middleware.js file in which we have checked every corresponding request body parameter, and inside the routes we have just registered our validator middleware, and that's it. So very small change we have to do and things will be done. So step by step we are incrementing on our movie booking API. I would recommend, if you are lagged behind or if you are not able to cope up, just go to the corresponding feature and just follow the things commit by commit, so that you know when what are we doing, because we are adding detailed commit messages. And you can see that specific theater resource with create theater API. Whatever we are adding features, we are adding. If we will be doing some bug fixes, then I'll put specific fix kind of a label behind the commit message. So everything is going incremental step by step. So this would be a recommendation from my side also, that if you can follow along these kind of notions, it would be good. In this particular part, we completed the validation for create validator API, and we also completed handling of the validation failure in case, let's say, the length validation and all is missing. So the major difference between both of the validations was, one was due to the absence of any property which is actually required in the request object, and the other was due to the fact that if somebody has sent like the correct expected request object, but it is not following the semantics. That's what we say, like the syntax is correct of the request object, but the semantics is wrong, like the expected values are not aligning with the values expected behind. In that case, we are going to follow this service based check, where we are manually checking the validation error, right? So I believe this part is clear to everyone, and I would recommend you guys to start implementing the APIs as long along with me, so that you are in sync with whatever we are doing in the corresponding videos. Now in this part, what we have to majorly do is, for the timing, what I have done is I have already merged our second branch into the master branch. If you will just go to the master branch, and if you will see the commits, you can see there is a one separate commit of merging the pull request from the feature 2 branch to the master branch. So technically our master is now the most updated branch, right? And what we can do, we can just do git pull origin master. I've already done the pull once, so you can see it is already up to date. Now in the master branch, I would like to do few changes, right? Those are regarding some of the cleanups that we intend to do, right? So these cleanups is going to help us to add some comments, remove some old unnecessary piece of code here and there wherever it required. So this cleanup is going to help us to make our application even more, I would say, cleaner and well defined, right? So without any further delay, let's just start. So we'll go file by file, and we will take a look at what is going on here, right? So if you go to index.js, uh, you can see we have already segregated out all of the code which is library import, then all of the code which is like our manual, our code import, right? And then we have started configuring registration of middlewares, registration of routes, and now here you can see we have a home API written. We don't need this, we will just remove it. Okay, so the home API is removed, right? And then you can see here that we have a comment in which we were actually trying to test our database. That comment we don't need now, so we'll remove it. Okay, and technically this index.js file looks much cleaner now. The git ignore seems good, the .env seems good, right? If you go to response body, what we can do is we can add a quick comment here that this object will be used as a template for building error responses. Okay, and this object will be used as a template for building success responses, right? So this is a comment that we can add, where we will be able to define like what is this success response body and what is this error response body. We wrote these two objects just to make sure that we are not writing any kind of redundant code. Then we can come to services, we can come to movie service, right? And you can see here we are requiring the movie model, that is good. And now here we have a create movie function. So what we can do is we can add a bunch of comments here. Okay, so we have this params data, that is actually object containing details of the new movie to be created, right? And in the what this function is going to return, this function is going to return this movie created, right? So returns the new movie object created, right? So now you can see we are able to actually identify what's the input data here and what's the output expected, right? So this is good, I believe. And I don't think we need to add any comments inside because it's almost self-explanatory. Let's have our next API. So ID which will be used to identify ID which will be used to identify the movie to be deleted. And what does it returns? What does it returns? If you remember, then it returns a specific type of an object, that is how many iterations were done and all. So it doesn't return the object that is exactly deleted. So what you can do, we can Google about find by ID and delete. So we can say find by ID and delete mongoose. So now let's search for it here. Find by ID and delete. Okay, what does it returns? It returns let's see, this kind of a query. Okay, and okay, we can even run it, but I don't want to run it for now. Return value. Okay, okay, it says the deleted document is returned. What we can do, we can try running this. I don't remember exactly. So let's do one thing. In the movie service, let's see if we have some movie data. Okay, yes, we have some movie data. Let's try to delete this movie. So we can go to Postman. We can have a delete request for movies. This, we don't need any params or anything. We'll just send. Okay, it says couldn't respond. Okay, server is not running. So npm start. And now send it. Okay, so we are getting the response of the deleted movie, right? That's correct. You can see the movie is deleted. Okay, so we can say the return type will be object containing the movie deleted. Object containing the movie deleted, right? So, or we can say object containing details of the movie, right? So this function is for that. And we can go to get movie by ID and just put a comment here, and it will automatically bring up this param. And the ID is going to be same. It will be ID which will be used to identify the movie to be fetched, right? So this unique ID is going to help us to identify which movie detail we want, right? And returns will be object containing movie fetched, right? It will return an object in which the movie in which we will be having the movie fetched. Then for update movie, so this ID is again with the same. We can say ID which will be used to identify the movie to be updated, right? And the data property is object that contains actual data which is to be updated, actual data which is to be updated in the DB. And then what does it returns? This function returns the new updated movie object, movie details, right? So we will be able to update the movie. Using the ID we'll be able to identify the movie. Using the data we'll be able to actually get the data which is going to get updated in the movie object, and then finally we are going to return an object containing the movie object. Last is fetch movies. So what is this filter about? So filter will help us in filtering out data based on the conditions it contains, right? And what does it returns? Returns an object containing all the filter, all the, you can say, containing all the movies fetched, right, based on the filter, right, based on the filter. So this filter parameter is actually going to help us whether there is a custom filter or not. So you can see filter dot name was there, so based on the name we were able to filter out our, I would say, records. Otherwise, irrespective of the fact whether filter is present or not, we are going to return an object containing movies. If filter was present, then only those movies are going to come which are going to abide the filter validations. Otherwise everything will come. So you can see after adding all of these comments, then understanding these I would say service functions become really very easy, and this is kind of like a recommended thing as well. So now we are going to hop on to the next service, and then we'll try to update that service as well, so that we can have some more cleaner comments and cleaner code. So let's just start. Okay, so after this movie service, let's go to theater service and add the comments here, right? So we can say this data object that we are getting, this is representing so you can write object containing details of the theater to be created, and it returns an object with the new theater details. Okay, similarly for delete theater, you can write this params ID is going to be the unique ID using which we can identify the theater to be deleted. And what is it going to return? Returns the new, or returns the deleted theater object. Okay, right, and same thing, we have already added the comment here. Let's say for get all theaters. So for get all theaters, this data is going to be the data to be used to filter out theaters based on city / pin code, right? And what does it returns? Returns an object with the filtered content of theaters. Okay, and in this update theaters, we're going to have two params. One is this ID, so we'll say the unique ID to identify the theater to be updated, data to be used to update the theater. This will be a data object, right? And that's it. Sorry, we should write returns also. So in returns, it returns the new updated theater object, right? So we will get this return value as well. So this is good. If we go to routes, we already have some comments here. Let's copy this comment from here and to this, right? And just to mention the CRUD kind of a thing, we can say create, and then here we can say delete, we can say read, we can say read here again, and we can say update. Update, right? So just to define the CRUD, and similarly for theater, we'll say the same thing, create, delete, read, read, update, update. Okay, so these should be good. These are models. I don't think we need much explanation here. If you go to the middlewares, these are also good for now. We can add the params here. This is the HTTP request object. This is the HTTP response object. Let's do one thing. Request object, response object, and next middleware function, right? And what does it returns? Whether the request is valid or not. Okay, this is something that it is going to return. And similar to this, in the theater one also, we are going to have this comment here, right? So we have added a comment. In the controllers, you can see every time we just have access to the request and response object, so we don't want to like put a lot of things there, right? One thing that we can have is we already just added one comment here for create a movie, and I believe rest of them are pretty straightforward because we already have comments in the services. So let's just quickly commit this change. So we'll say git status, a lot of file changes are there, git add all, git commit -m, cleaned up the repo a bit by adding more comments, and git push origin, because currently we are on the master branch, we'll do git push origin master. So in the master we have made all the changes, right? So let's go to our app. If you refresh, on the master we have done all the changes, so you'll be able to see the index.js file also getting updated here. You can see it's the updated file, right? Now what we have to do, we will start setting up a new branch. We'll say git checkout -b feature 3 associate movie and theaters, right? So now we have a new branch set up with us. Now on this new branch, from the next upcoming parts, we are going to build up all of our functionalities to associate movies with the theaters. What we want to do is we want to like have a theater to get a listing of multiple movies. We can remove listing, we can add listing, and multiple things around that. So we're going to discuss about that in the next upcoming parts, but I hope the overall logic of the cleanup is clear to everyone. Let's just start talking about what we have to do further in our application, right? So I'll try to define the agenda for it, right? Just a second. Okay. So whenever we browse, whenever we browse through any movie booking application, we can search for all the movies running inside a theater or list list one second, or list all the theaters running the movie. So running the movie. Okay, let's just wait for a second. Right. So we can list all the theaters running a movie, or uh, we can check for like one theater having all the movies, like what all movies we have in a theater, right? We want to see, right? So now we will try to set up a relationship between theater resource, uh, theater resource and movie resource, right? Theater resource and movie resource, so that we can give users functionality to browse their favorite movies. To browse their favorite movies, right? So technically what I'm trying to say is that whenever we go through a movie booking kind of an application, then we are able to see what all theaters are having a particular movie, or a theater is having what different type of movies, right? A theater is having what different type of movies. So currently in our application, theater resource doesn't know anything about the movie resource, and the movie resource doesn't know anything about the theater resource, but we have to somehow couple them so that we can set up kind of like a relationship between theaters and movies, so that the users of our application also can list all the movies of a theater, or all the theaters in which a movie is running, and so on and so forth. So let me even give you a demo on Book My Show. So what we can do is we can open Book My Show, right? And let's try to open Book My Show here. So let's see. So let's say for Spider-Man, if you click on Spider-Man, right? My location must be already selected Delhi NCR, right? And if we go to book tickets, we can select the format, let's say 2D English, and we are able to list all the theaters of a particular city which is having Spider-Man, right? You can see all the theaters are getting listed with the corresponding timings wherever we are having Spider-Man running in Delhi NCR, right? This is one way. The other way is, let's go to the home page and let's search for a particular, I would say, cinema. So you can say, let's say M2K Pitampura, right? Let's take a bigger hall, I believe. Cinemas, um, PVR Saket. Okay. So if you'll select PVR Saket, then on PVR Saket on, let's say, Friday 2nd, what all movies are listed? Beast, Liger, this. All of these movies are running in PVR Saket on Friday 2nd of September, right? So not only we are able to list all the theaters in which a movie is running, but we can also list all the movies which is running in a theater, right? This is something really very important. So we need to try to establish this kind of a relationship. You can also open something like Paytm Movies. Right, here also you can see we are going to get a selection, and let's say if you open any movie, uh, let's go for this, right? And okay, there is no buy ticket option, I guess. Let's open something else. Let's have this. Okay, so for this movie, all the theaters that are running this movie we are able to list. The best part, right? And if you go back, right, and search for a cinema, you can go to cinema and search anything. Let's say PVR Phoenix. Then in PVR Phoenix, let's say on Friday 2nd, what all movies are getting listed? We can see that, right? All these movies are running in PVR Phoenix Market City. So this is a common feature, right? Not only Book My Show, but also other apps like Paytm Movies and all are also listing, are also having this kind of feature where we can list all the movies, right? So what I'm trying to say here is, we will try to create, we will try to create association between theaters and movies, theater and movies, and we will create API endpoints so that the user can actually filter out all the theaters, running a movie, or all the movies running in a theater, right? So this kind of a relationship we want to establish, so we'll be creating dedicated API endpoints that are going to help us in actually implementing this, right? So this is going to be the agenda for some upcoming part of videos, like multiple videos we are going to, or let's say multiple parts we are going to have in the upcoming in this series upcoming. And we are going to establish this relationship. We are going to build up dedicated endpoints that we will be able to help us to associate both of them. So this is something that we want to do. So I hope the overall agenda for the next upcoming few parts is clear to everyone. We have already talked about the agenda that we are going to have, that is, we are going to somehow try to associate theaters with the corresponding movies, right? So we'll try to list down the steps that we actually have to do overall, and then we will be having dedicated parts where we will be actually implementing these steps. right? So we intend to set up a relationship between movies and theaters, right? We want to intend a relationship between movies and theaters, right? Now if you will like think in a product perspective, then a theater will be having a lot of movies. We can write a theater has many movies, right? A theater will be having many movies, but we cannot say opposite that a movie is running in a lot of theaters. So in a nutshell you will feel that okay, this statement is correct, right? That movie runs in many theaters. But if you see movie as an entity, then movie is not getting created by theater owners, or like the stakeholders are not there. The stakeholders of the movie are the owners of the movie that are allowing us to sell the movie on our platform. They don't care that what all theaters their movie is associated to. So they don't want the, like, we don't want the data of movie to contain any, I would say, idea about theaters. Movies as an entity will not be having any idea in what all theaters they are getting run, because they don't care about that, right? But theater as an entity definitely needs to have information of what all movies they are running, because that will help them to actually calculate their overall revenue, profit, and everything. So we will be just having a situation where a theater has many movies, not the opposite part that a movie belongs to a theater or a movie has many theaters. We don't want that kind of situation. And due to this only, having a NoSQL database makes sense for us, because if we wanted to have many to many relationship, a SQL database would have made more sense. Now, when we say that a theater has many movies, what we are going to do, we will first update, we'll first update theater model to have an array of movies. An array of movies which will represent list of movies, list of movies running in a theater, right? List of movies running in a theater, right? So in MongoDB what we can have is, if you want to have this many type of relation, has many type of relation, then in one model we can have an array of the reference to other model. I'll talk about these referencing, but we can, in a nutshell, we can say that the theater model is going to have an array. That particular array is going to store reference to all the movies, that all those movies which are currently running in the theater, that thing we are going to store in that theater schema, right? Then um, we will create meaningful endpoints. We will create meaningful endpoints from user's perspective, right? We'll create meaningful endpoints from user's perspective. Then we will create some endpoints. We will create some endpoints that will be used by the admins only to maintain movies, list of movies inside a theater. Right. So for the timing, we are going to make some meaningful APIs for the users, but later we are going to introduce the concept of admins, where not any user can come and like change the movies that we are having in our database, database which are associated to a theater. But instead, we will give this, I would say, task to only those kind of users which are having admin role. That is going to be something that we are going to definitely do, right? So if we talk about what we already have in the app till now, then we can say that so far in our movie booking app, we have created CRUD. We have created CRUD APIs on movies and theaters by creating corresponding models, controllers, services, and routes, right? Using Mongo and Express. So this is something that we have already done by now, right? We already have the CRUD APIs for the theater resource and the movie resource, right? Now, what we are going to do, we are going to have a list of APIs that will help us to update theater model, with list of movies, add movies in a theater. Like we'll try to prepare an API that will help us to add movies in a theater, remove movies from a theater, right? Get the list of theaters in which a movie is running, right? Search for a movie in a particular theater, or list all movies from a theater, right? So this is something that we are going to do. Like all of these tasks we have to do in the further upcoming part, that is going to like help us to actually establish the relationship between both of the entities, right? So from the next upcoming part, we will first of all start making changes to the schema. I'll talk about the references. After that change in the schema, we are actually going to start building the API endpoints. So I hope the overall agenda for the upcoming parts is clear to everyone. In this video, we are going to actually start setting up the relationship between movies and theaters. So for the time being, what do we know is, we know that theater has many movies. Theater has many movies. Right. So there is a concept of references in MongoDB, right? So let's just start learning about references first. so that we will be able to understand how to set up these relationships. So let me open the docs in front of you guys. So let's read about database references. Okay. So let's read line by line so that we'll be able to understand most of the things. For many use cases in MongoDB, the denormalized data model where related data is stored within a single document is optimal. Right. So what they are saying is generally in MongoDB, what do we keep is if we have related data, then we store it inside a single document only. However, in some cases, it makes sense to store related information in separate documents, typically in different collection or databases. And that is our use case, right? We have theaters in a separate collection and databases in a separate collection. And we have to somehow handle both of these things, right? So what can we do? So this page outlines the alternative procedure that predate the lookup and graph lookup pipeline stages, right? Let's just not go into that, right? If you want to just read about lookup, graph lookup, you can say that you can use the lookup pipeline stage to perform a left outer join to an uncharted collection, and graph lookup pipeline stage to join an uncharted collection to perform recursive search. This is kind of like an advanced concept. You can avoid that for the time being. Now, MongoDB application use one of the two methods to relate the documents. Manual references, uh, manual references to save the underscore ID field of one document in the other document as reference. This is the reference that I'm talking about. So what do? We will actually manually save the reference to the other document in one document. And how we will store the reference? We will store the reference based on the ID. So for what we are going to do, we are going to store multiple movie IDs directly inside a theater, right? So your application runs a second query to return the related data. These references are simple and sufficient for most of the cases. DB refs are references from one document to another using the value of the first document's ID field, collection name, and optionally to its database name, as well as any other fields. DB refs allows you to more easily reference documents stored in multiple collections. So if you go for manual referencing, in manual referencing, you can see a manual reference is the practice of including one document's ID in another document. The application can issue a second query to resolve the reference field as needed, right? So what you can do is you can say in places and they here in people. We are actually storing places ID. So this places ID we are storing as a parameter, and then we are storing this places ID here as well, right? Whereas we have a concept of DB refs. What is a DB ref? In DB ref, you can see it's a convention of representing a document rather than specific reference type. These include the name of the collection and in some other subcases database name as well. So what we actually do is we make a ref field that holds the name of the collection where the reference document resides, right? So we try to have a ref field like this. So we are going to have the first one. We are going to try to implement the first one. So like the implementation that we are going to do is going to be kind of like a hybrid. We are going to use the refs to manually reference one document from other. But this is kind of like very powerful tool. And if you want to do something like this in Mongoose, because we are using Mongoose as the ODM, so we can use this populate, right? So MongoDB has join like lookup aggregation operator, right, in version greater than equal to 3.2. Mongoose has a powerful alternative called populate, which lets you reference document in other collection. Now the thing is, when you reference movies inside a theater, when we will call for theaters, how can we get the movies? So we can say, let's say this is the person schema. In this person schema, we are having stories, right? We are going to store an array of a particular type of object. This object is going to have a type object ID schema of the schema type and a reference to the story model. And inside the story schema, we are going to have fans, which is going to be an array of object where the type is going to be object ID. This object ID is nothing but the object ID that we are getting in the database. For example, this object ID we are talking about, right? So, and the reference to the person model, right? This is going to be something. Also, a story is going to belong to a person as well. So instead of an array of person, this is going to be a single person, that is the author, right? So in these kind of manners, we can actually associate both of them. And then we can do populate. So let me show you. So if you call for populate, let me see where they are using. You can see story.populated author, right? You can check whether you have an author value or not, right? So you can just use the populate function to to instead get all the associated data, or just use the populated function to check whether you have a data or not. So you can see populate fans, populate author. So if you will use this populate function, it will actually also insert the details of the corresponding association. So we'll do the application, and then we'll be able to then we will be able to understand things in a much better way. So first of all, let's just go to the theater model. So we are already on feature 3, right? So let's close all of this. Okay. So let's go to theater model, and inside the theater model, we are going to have one more parameter, that is movies, right? We are going to have one more parameter, that is going to be movies. This movie parameter is actually going to be kind of like an object, and inside this object, we are going to have a type. So the type is going to tell you what type of data do you want to store, right? What type of data do you want to store? Now the thing is, we can store the corresponding movies, right? We can have a database like this. Let me show you. So what will be there? We'll be having a theater uh, object, or let's say theater document, with the theater ID, name of the theater, pin code of the theater, city of the theater, and so on and so forth. And then there will be an option of movies. This option of movies will be actually an array of movie IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 9, 8, so on and so forth. So this array of movie IDs we are going to store. But technically, by just storing array of movie IDs, we won't be able to do much, right? Because just think about it. How can you associate timings? Like, this movie will be having a lot of slots, right? In one theater, it will be having multiple slots. So how to associate those kind of things? We can discuss about that later. But first of all, our main agenda is that for a particular movie, we have to associate it with a theater. So we are going to store array of movie ID inside a theater document, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to say type is an array of. Now the type is going to be an ID of the movie, and ID is what? An object ID. So in order to represent object ID, you should write mongoose dot schema dot types dot object ID. So this represent that this object is going to be an array of object IDs, and they are going to actually reference the movie collection. This is going to be something really very important, right? So based on this association, we will be able to reference movies to a theater, so that we will get all the movies presently running in a theater. This is going to be something really very interesting, right? Now let's just quickly commit this. So we can say git add all, git commit -m, added reference to the movie collection inside theaters resource, and let's push it inside feature 3. Okay, so now we have successfully referenced our two collections, right? So we are ready to store movie IDs, right? Now in the further upcoming set of parts, we are going to start building APIs that are going to actually help us in actually storing and adding movies in these theaters, deleting movies which are like gone, and so on and so forth. So I hope the overall logic on how to reference one collection to other is clear to everyone. You just have to write this thing. If you, instead of an array, if you just wanted to associate one movie, you can avoid these square brackets, and this will be just a movie object with an ID of the corresponding movie. If you want to have an array of movies, this is something that you can do. So I hope the overall logic is clear to everyone. Now what we have to do is we have to set up an endpoint. Set up an endpoint to add movies in a theater. Right? So this API will be used. This API will be used to add a movie in a theater, right? We will send a request body. We will send a request body consisting of an array of movies, let's say movie IDs, named movie IDs. Right, so we can we will be sending, like in the request body, we'll be sending a parameter movie IDs that will be an array of movie IDs that we want to add to a theater. So what this will help us is, this will help us to add multiple movies at same point of time inside our theater, right? Then we will add another attribute. Named insert. We will add another attribute named insert, which will be a boolean. According to this variable, we decide whether we want to add a movie to theater listing or remove the movie from the listing, right? So if the insert value will be true, if the insert parameter of the request body, if that parameter is true, then we are going to actually insert our, I would say, movie into the theaters. Otherwise we are going to remove it, right? This can be a custom thing because these APIs are for our clients. We can even have two different endpoints, one endpoint to remove some movies and one endpoint to add some movies. Both of the ways work fine, right? uh, we can set up this kind of a thing also, where we are passing an insert parameter. Correspondingly, we can have one more API that can help us to remove the movies. Anything should work fine, right? Okay, so this is going to be the agenda for our API, right? If we talk about the signature of the API, then the route of the API will be /mba /API /v1 /theaters /ID. This ID will be actually theater ID /movies, right? So on this route, in a particular theater given by this theater ID, we are going to add some movies, where we will get the movie data inside request object. Will be having a movie IDs parameter, which will be an array, and an insert parameter, which will be a boolean. And the type of the request is going to be patch, because this theater resource is going to get partially updated. We don't want to update everything in this theater resource, but it is going to get partially updated, right? So for partial update, we can use the patch request. So this will be the request body, and the response body will be having a success parameter, an error parameter, a data parameter, and a message parameter. The success parameter is going to tell us whether the API was successful in its operation or not. The error parameter will tell us that whether there was any error or not, because if there is no error, this error parameter will be an empty object. Otherwise, this error will be having the details of the error that occurred, right? The data parameter will be also depending on whether the API was successful or not, because if the API was not successful, this data parameter will be an empty object. Otherwise, it will be having some data. The message parameter is going to be dependent on whether we were having a successful API hit or not. Based on that, we will be having a custom messaging here. So this is going to be the overall, I would say, API definition that we are going to have. So let's just start implementing things step by step so that we are able to complete the implementation for it, right? So let's just do one thing. Let's just let's close the remaining tabs. Okay, so now we have already added the reference. Now let's just come to services, right? Now inside services, we want to add a function to the theater service so that we are able to add movies to the theater, right? So let's just do that. So we can come to theater service here, right? And inside the theater service, we can write a function const update movies in theaters, right? This is going to be an async function. We are going to have theater ID, right? And we are going to have movie IDs. We are going to have movie IDs, right? And we are going to have an insert parameter. Based on these things, we will be actually implementing our logic, right? Okay. So first of all, I'm going to implement a basic version where whatever movie IDs we get, we are going to just directly insert them, right? In the later parts, we can add some modification that if a movie is already added, we should not add it, and things like that, right? So let's just see. What we are going to do is we will first of all check what is there in the insert parameter. If the insert parameter is true, that means we need to add movies. Otherwise, we need to remove movies. Okay, cool. So first of all, with the corresponding theater ID, we need to find the theater object. We'll say const theater is equals to await theater dot find by ID theater ID. Okay, and if due to any issue we are not able to find the theater, if not theater, we are going to return an error, no such theater found for the ID provided. And we are going to return a code 404. That is, we were not able to find the corresponding theater. But if we were able to find the corresponding theater, now let's just try to do something. So if we are having an insert, then what we are going to do, we are going to iterate over movie IDs. And because it's an array, we can apply for each. And then we can say for a particular movie ID, we want to say theater dot movies, because if you see, In the schema, we added a parameter movies, which is actually an array. Dot push theater dot movies dot push movie ID. Right. So this is going to help us to push the movie IDs. Otherwise, we have to remove the movie IDs, right? So what we can say is let saved movie IDs is equals to theater dot movies. This is the previous movies that were already running in the theater. Then we are going to apply a loop on movie IDs. Movie ID dot for each movie ID, right? And then we can say saved movie IDs is equals to saved movie IDs dot filter, right? We are going to filter based on the fact that the saved movie ID is equal to movie ID. Then we are going to remove this particular movie ID from the save movie IDs, and we are going to move forward, right? At last, what we are going to do, theater dot movies is equals to saved movie IDs, right? So what we did, we are going to go to each movie ID that was provided to us in the array, and insert parameter was already false, so we wanted to remove all of these movie IDs from the corresponding theater for which we have the theater ID. So what we are going to do, we are going to get all the movies that were already running in the theater. Then we'll iterate on the movie IDs that we want to remove. Let's say we are at any particular movie ID. What we are going to do, we are going to filter out the saved movie IDs, that is already running movies in the theater. We are going to filter out those entries which are equal to the movie ID, and I believe there will be only one entry, so that one particular entry is going to get removed. And at last, when all this is done for all of the movies, we can say we are going to update the movies parameter of the theater using the updated filtered saved movie IDs array, right? Now the thing is, by just doing this, we are not going to actually make an update inside the database also. This is just only updating the theater object that is loaded into the memory for us. If you want to actually make changes to the database, we have to run a call. We'll say await, because it's a database call, theater dot save. We have to save the theater, and then we have to return the theater object, right? This is something that is going to be very important, because if we will not save it, we will not be seeing actual change in the database, as the changes that we are doing here is going to run on the JavaScript objects like theater and all. We are not actually like making a new entry or updating our database. So that's why if you will not do the dot save function, it can be kind of like a bit problematic for you, because you won't see the changes in the database, right? So we are ready with our service function. Let's just export it. Update movies in theaters, right? So we have exported it, and now let's just try to write a controller for this so that it can consume and give us the corresponding result when we make an API call. So let's just start. So now let's just start implementing the controller, right? So let's just move to our controller and see. Let's open the controller. So this is theater controller, right? Inside the theater controller, we are going to have a function const update movies. This is going to be an asynchronous function. It is going to take the HTTP request object and the HTTP response object. We'll try to let's see, we should do one thing before we actually implement the controller. We should try to bind it inside a try catch like our service, or let's see, let's not directly bind it currently, because if we will throw any error from here, we'll catch it in the controller. So let's bind it this one inside a try catch. We can do console.log error, and in the error response body, we can set the error with the corresponding error object, and we can return rest.status 500.json, and we can say error response body. Now let's just talk about the success. What we are going to do, we are going to get the response as await theater service dot update movies in theaters, right? And it is going to expect three parameters from us. The first parameter is going to be request.params.id, that is the theater id, then request.body.movie ids, and then request.body.insert, the insert parameter. And this is going to give us a response. If the response is having an error parameter, that means something went wrong around finding the theater most probably. So what we are going to do, we'll say error response body dot error is equals to response dot error. Then we can say error response body dot message will be let's not set the message, it's already there. Let's do one thing. We can say return rest.status, the status code we are going to send. So we'll say it will be response.code.json error response body, right? This is going to happen when there was an error. If there was no error, then what we are going to do, we are going to say success response body dot data is equals to response, then success response body dot message is equals to successfully updated movies in the theater, and then we can return rest dot status 200, that is success dot json success response body, right? So this should help us to build up our controller. We can have update movies go here, right? And we have returned this in the module.exports. We need to do one more thing. We need to add a comment here regarding the params. So this is the theater id, then the movie id, and the insert. This will be unique id of the theater for which we want to update movies, array of movie ids that are expected to be updated in theater, boolean that tells whether we want to add movies, or let's say we want to insert movies or remove them, right? What we are going to return, the updated theater object. This is going to be the return type, right? Now what we have to do is we can come to the routes, and let's go to theater routes, and we are going to add one more request, that is going to be app.patch. The URL is /mba/api/v1/theaters. Then we are going to give a theater ID and then movies. And to which function we are going to map it to? We are going to map it to theater controller dot update movies. Okay, this is going to be there. Okay, now before we start testing, in the update movies function, definitely in the request body we should have an insert parameter and a movie IDs parameter, otherwise this request is going to fail, right? this movie IDs and insert. So what we can do is in the theater middleware, we can go to theater middlewares and we can validate this particular function. So we can say const validate update movies. We are going to have access to the request object, response object, and the next middleware. And what we are going to say, we'll first of all do validation of insert parameter. So we are going to say if not request.body.insert, then what we are going to say, we are going to say error response body dot message, the insert parameter is missing in the request, and we can say return res.status 400.json error response body. Right, so this is going to check if we have insert parameter in our incoming HTTP request or not. Then it is going to check if not request.body.movie IDs, right? Then we can say error response body dot message is equals to, we can say no movies present in the request to be updated in theater, right? That means no movie was present in the request. We can say return res.status 400, that is bad request dot json error response body, right? Okay, now what we can do is we can have a similar check like this. So just like we checked for an array, right, we can also check there for an array, that always we should get an array. Like we can have a movie ID parameter, but maybe that's a string or some other object. So we should say if not movie IDs is instance of array, then we can say error response body dot message is equals to, we can write something like expected array of movies but found something else. And then we can do bad request res.status 400 bad request dot json error response body. Okay, and at last we can check if and this should not be movie IDs, this should be request.body.movie IDs. And then we should say if request.body.movie IDs dot length, because now we know that it's an array, is less than or equal to 0, then we can say error response body dot message no movie IDs, no movies present in the array provided. And then we can return again a bad request 400 bad request dot json error response body. Okay, if we are able to validate all of this, so let me even add some comments. So validate movie IDs array presence or movie IDs presence, validate if movie IDs is an array or not, validate if movie IDs is empty or not. Technically no point of doing less than equal to, just we can just do double equal to, right? If we are able to validate all of this, like none of the above condition occurs and everything is fine, we are just going to call the next middleware. We can write everything is fine, everything is fine. Okay, so let's just export this function. So we can say validate theater create request, right? And we are going to go to our theaters routes. We already have the theater middleware here. We can say theater middleware dot validate let's see, in the theater middleware we have, okay, this should not be, this should be validate update movie request, my bad. We go to routes, validate update movie request, right? So that we are never going to get hampered request body, right? So all of this thing is now done and ready for us. So let's see if the server is running. Okay, server crashed. Let's see. Validate update movie request is not defined. Let's see. Theater middleware. Okay, it should be movies, I guess. Movies request. Let's write here request. Let's update this also as request, and then go to routes and update this as request as well. Okay, cool. So let's see if the server is running fine now. Okay, server is running fine. Let's just come to Postman. Now what do we intend to do is, we'll go to body, we'll try to prepare a raw body. We'll be having an insert parameter, this will be true, and there will be movie IDs, that will be an array of IDs. So let's see, it will be a patch request. Okay, and let's pass up some movie IDs from the database. Let's slide it up here. Let's go to movies. Okay, so we have only two movies. Let's add only these two. This one and this one. So we should pass them as a string. Okay, and the theater that you want to pick is, let's say, PVR Saket. This should be slash theaters slash ID slash movies, right? Let's see the route, if it is slash movies. Yes. Okay, cool. So if you try to send the request, okay, so technically it feels like we have added movies, right? And if you refresh, you can see now we have a movies array. Now we have a movies array with us that is having the object ID of the movies, right? If you want to actually also see what movies are we getting, so what we can do is, let's go to service, theater service. Currently here what we are doing, we are just directly returning the theater object, right? In this theater object, what we can do, we can say populate movies. Okay, let's try this now. So let's make some change, and let's remove this. How can we remove this? Okay, let's update some other theater. Let's update this Luke's Cinema now. Okay, let's send the request again. And now if you will technically see, in the previous response we were just getting movies with their corresponding IDs. Now if you will carefully see, we are getting an array of two movie objects. You can see one object of movie and the complete second object of movie. So we are getting all the details of the movie, and all we had to do was just write this dot populate movie. So it's kind of like joins the collection, and it was so easy. Like whenever you have an object, inside that object you have reference to some other collection, just do dot populate and name of that collection, and boom, you will be ready with your operation, right? So we are able to get all of these things here. If you will refresh, you can see we have movies array. We just have this object ID. Actually in the database just the object ID is stored. If you will do populate, then in order to return the object we are able to get that, right? Let's right? When we are returning that object, so this is something that happens in runtime. In runtime, it like joins up the object from the other part and brings it up here. So we are able to do this and seems really good. Let's try to check our validations. If we will remove the insert parameter and send it again, the insert parameter is missing, makes sense. If we remove movie IDs and let's make it movie ID, no movies present, makes sense. And if we make this also as a string, or let's say like this, expected array, makes sense. And let's say if the array is empty, let's say if somebody sends empty array, so no movies present. Okay, so at least for addition of the movie, things are working fine. Now even let's try to have deletion of the movies, right? So we have these two movie IDs, let's delete one movie, right? So technically we should be left with only one movie in this theater, and insert should now become false. If you send it, it says insert parameter is missing. Okay, let's see. It says insert parameter is missing. Let's check the code for validator. So it says if not, request.body.insert. Okay, so insert is actually a boolean, right? So if insert won't be present, then it will be undefined, right? So let's not do this, because it being a boolean parameter, what will happen, it will start actually checking it for false also. So let's keep it undefined. If insert is not defined, then it should throw an error. So let's say if you don't have an insert parameter, it will give insert parameter missing. Now we have insert parameter as false, send it, and now technically it should have removed it. So we have the data of the movie, and you can see now we have only one movie here. So in Luke's Cinema, you can see in Luke's Cinema we were having two object IDs. If we refresh, now we are having only one object ID. So that's, the removal is also working absolutely fine. So I hope the overall API is clear to everyone. Now there are multiple things that we need to rectify in the API. For example, what if somebody tries to add multiple movies? One movie can be already present, right? We should not allow the user to add multiple movies. That kind of checks should be there so that we don't allow any kind of a human error, right? These things will get updated and modified in the upcoming parts. We will be incrementally building our application, so let's not rush. For the timing, let's just commit this. So git add all, git commit -m, added API to update movies in a theater, git push origin, right? So we have successfully pushed our code, and technically we are ready with addition of movies in a theater. And to be very honest, this is a very big part that we have completed. In the further upcoming set of parts, we are also going to discuss how we can fetch details from the theaters. That is going to be really very interesting. Okay, so now having the filter of the city, let's just see some other filters that we can build up, right? So if we go to our theater service, now either like the code that we have written is that if there will be a city parameter, then we are going to put that city key value pair inside our filter. Now there can be a case that we also get a pin code, right? Now the pin code can be a situation that you can get a pin code, like just the query of a pin code, or maybe you get a city as well as a pin code, right? Two filters together. So if I will put an else if and put data, if the data object is there, and data dot, let's say, pin code, then the situation will be that if you get both city and pin code, then it will not consider both of them as the filter, right? It will only consider the city if city and pin code are both present. If city is not present and then pin code is present, then only it will take pin code, and that we don't want to do. So in these kind of cases, instead of having an else, let's put a separate if check, right? So this checks whether city is present in query params or not, and this is going to separately check whether pin code is present in query params or not. Now the benefit of this is that whether if city and pin code both of them are present, this if check will be executed separately. There is no else or else if. So this if check will be executed separately, and we will be having both of them as our filter. So we can say query dot pin code is equals to data dot pin code. Okay, and now we have our pin code set as well, right? And I don't think we need to do anything more. So let's go here and let's try to take a pin code for which we want to get all the movie halls. So let's get all the movie halls in CP, right? So this was the pin code for a movie hall in CP, right? And the server is already running. Now instead of city, you can see the moment I uncheck this URL gets cleared. I can add pin code, and the value of the pin code I can keep as 110001. If you send it, now you can see this is the first object that we are getting. Here the pin code is same, here we have the pin code as same, here we have the pin code as same. So we are getting all the I would say theaters where the pin code is same. So we are able to filter it based on pin code as well. If we do by city, let's say we put the city as New Delhi. New Delhi. And if we send the request, now you can see everything from New Delhi is coming, irrespective of whether the pin code is there or not. And there can be a case that both city and the pin code parameter comes together, right? Both of these parameter comes together. So now what will happen is, you can see the URL looks like city is equals to New Delhi and pin code is equals to this, right? So if you send this request, you can see we are getting everything which is in a particular pin code. Although it doesn't make a lot of sense because the pin code data that we are having will be belonging to one city only. But still, if somehow we get both of the filter parameters, then also we are able to handle everything. And in order to actually show you that, let's do one thing. Let's try to print the query object and let's see what is there in the query object. So let's bring our terminal there. Now if we just send city, you can see in the query object we have a city named as New Delhi. If you send both city and pin code, you can see we are having both city and pin code. So this kind of an object, query object, we have to pass in our service so that we are able to filter it, right? Okay. So this filter is also done. We are able to successfully inculcate the pin code filter as well, right? Apart from that, we can put maybe one more filter. We can say that what if the user is sending us the data of the name of the theater. For example, by name we want to search something. The user already knows the name of the theater, and by name we want to search for something, right? So what we can do is, we can say if data and data dot name, right? If the data dot name parameter is present, we can say this checks whether name is present in query params or not. Then we can say query dot name is equals to data dot name, right? Query dot name will become the key, name will become the key in the query object, and whatever we are getting in the name parameter from the data object here, that is going to get as a value. Now if you start putting a name as well, that from a particular city, now you put a name as well. Let's say we say PVR Plaza and send it. Now you can see we are only getting one data point, that is in New Delhi pin code, and this is the name PVR Plaza. If I remove pin code and city, then also we are going to get the same output. So we are able to filter out data based on these things, right? So kind of like the filter functionality is working fine, and the basic filter that we have set up is also working absolutely fine, right? So let's just quickly commit this. So we have changes in the controller and the service, right? If you check the controller, in the controller we have just passed the query object, and whatever changes we have done is in the service, so not much change in the controller. Let's add both of them. So git add all, added custom filter for city, pin code and name. Git push, and we have successfully pushed the code, right? So using this basic functionality, like just a basic set of if checks, we are able to put up filters, right? Now this filters, the game of these filters can go a bit advanced, right? This is something that is basic, and we were intended to do it, but I would like to discuss a bit of advanced things here as well. For example, let's say when we are getting the list of all the theaters, irrespective of the fact whether we have given city, pin code or anything or not. Let's say we don't want all the theaters, we just want the first 5 theaters. Then we move to the next 5 theaters. That is pagination kind of a thing. For example, if you open Google and you search for PVR in New Delhi, okay, so you're going to get a lot of results, like search results at least, right? You are going to get a lot of search results, and when you click on see more, right, see only approximately 10 odd results are coming. Then you click on page number 2, then you get the next 10 results, then you click on page number 3, and then you get the next 10 results, and so on and so forth. This kind of functionality is called as pagination. In pagination, we actually get some X amount of data, not the like if let's say we are having total n data pointers, then we only get X out of them, which where X is of course less than n, and the next X we have to separately call. Then we call the next X. For example, we get the first 10 set of data, then we call the next 10 set, then we call the next 10 set, and so on and so forth. So this is something that we will try to build in the upcoming part, where we will see filters like these coming into the picture. I've already started preparing the APIs for the theater resource, and in the last part we were actually trying to build the theater resource API, where we were trying to get all the theaters, and then we were trying to put up some filters in those theaters. That is, we were able to get theaters that belongs to a particular city, or theaters that belong to a particular pin code, right? Otherwise we were able to also do a search by name. Now we are going to take this discussion a step further, and we are going to introduce some kind of like advanced filters that will help us to I would say enhance the overall functionality of our application. So let's just see. So the first thing that we want to build is pagination. So let me just first of all talk about it, right? So we want to build the feature for pagination, right? First of all, you need to understand what is pagination. When we Google search, then we don't get all the results rendered in one page, right? We hardly get 9 to 10 results first, right? Whenever you do Google search, you generally see 9 to 10 approximately results on one screen. Then we have to click on 2. So you can see on in Google, on the very last of the screen, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 like page numbers written, which is a page number. That shows us the next 10 records. Then we click page number 3 to get next 10 records, and so on, right? We click page by page and then we get the new records. For example, let's go to Google and let's search for PVR in New Delhi. Right, you'll start getting these results, like approximately 10 odd results we get. And at the last of the page, you can see we have this page number 2, page number 3, page number 4, page number 5, and so on. These page numbers are listed. You can also press next, or you can press a specific page number. So let's say if you press page number 2, then the next 10 records will come up. See, the next 10 records in the Google search will come up. If you press page number 3, then the next 10 records in the Google search will come up, and so on and so forth. And as far as I remember, in Amazon also a similar kind of a thing happens. Let's see. If you search for, let's say, something like camera, right, you can see we are getting some results here, right? And then after approximately 15 odd results, then we are getting this page number 2. When you go to the page number 2, then the next 10-15 results will come up. Then you go to page number 3, then the next 10-15 results will come up, and so on and so forth. So this page, like, we have distributed our data among pages. The benefit is we don't need to fetch like all the data at once. We can just fetch the first 10 records, then we can make another query to fetch the next 10 records, and so on and so forth. Because let's say if we have millions of records, then fetching all of them and sending them to the front end can be a very tedious task, and front end can be bombarded with a lot of information that can even make it slow. That's why we have 2-3 kind of things. One is pagination, where you distribute your data among pages, like you get the first 10 records on the first page, then the next 10 records on the second page, then the next 10 records on the third page, and so on and so forth. Apart from this, we also have something called as infinite scroll. I believe you can see that kind of a thing on apps like Instagram. In Instagram, you don't get all of the data of your feed loaded at once in your I would say application. You scroll a bit, and then let's say after 15-20 posts, it tries to load more posts. Then you scroll up again, then it tries to load more posts. Similar thing happens with WhatsApp also. In WhatsApp, you don't get all of your chat loaded at once. You scroll down a bit, then you get chats from a particular date before a particular date, then you scroll down a bit more, then you get more chats loaded, and so on and so forth. So these kind of strategies are very helpful in the cases where we don't want to load all of the data at once, because it can put a lot of load on the device where we are getting it rendered, and it puts a lot of load on the server as well, because you have to fetch all the data, bind that data in an object, and then send it through the network. It can also cause network congestion. So these strategies like pagination helps us. So now, how do we implement pagination? If you have already read something like SQL, where we talk about RDBMS, then there are two properties called as limit and offset. Right? There are these two properties in RDBMS which can help us to implement pagination. What is limit? It sets a limit on how many total records to return in one query. So this is going to set the fact that when you run one query, it doesn't matter how you run it, how many maximum records can come in one query. Let's say if you put a limit of 10, then at max 10 records will come. If you put a limit of 1, then at max 1 record will come. What's offset? if we have data arranged in an order, then offset tells us that from what record number we should start returning the data. That is, you can say it tells us how many record numbers, from what record number you can start sending the data, or how many record numbers you have to skip. For example, if you put a offset of 2, it's going to skip the first 2, and then it is going to start rendering things. But these things helps us in RDBMS. So generally we write a query like select star from, let's say, students, limit 15, offset 5, something like this, right? This kind of a query helps us with MySQL, PGSQL, and similar RDBMS. But we are learning MongoDB, right? How to do this pagination thing in MongoDB. So in MongoDB also we have a limit parameter that can help us to set up the limit, and we have a much more verbose skip parameter. Using the skip parameter, you will be able to decide how many records to skip before you start actually considering a first record. So using these two things, we can actually implement pagination. So you can write a query like model.find, right? The first parameter of the find is the filter parameter, that is the properties based on which we have to filter it. The next parameter is an object. In this object, one second. So the next parameter is this this object, right? This is going to tell us that what properties or what attributes of the filter data you want. For example, if let's say we want only the name of the theaters, then in this object we are going to pass a name, right? And then the third property, we can use limit, put some limit, and we can use skip and tell how many records to skip. Something like this we can do, right? This is one way in which we will be able to get paginated results, right? So generally this parameter is also called as fields, right? And then you can do this, or what you can do is on the dot find function, you can use the dot limit function as well, right? And then put the value of the limit, and then on this overall result you can use the dot skip function as well. So you can do these kind of chaining of functions also, right? So let's just see, I can show you in both the ways. So the thing is, if we want to implement this in the code, we will be expecting, now whenever we send pagination data, generally pagination data is also sent in query params. We are already handling query params in get all theaters, so let's try to handle a bit more. So now we can say that we will build a new object, that is pagination object, and we can say that if data and data dot limit, if there is a limit property sent to us in the query params, we can say pagination dot limit is equals to data dot limit. Okay, let's try to do first this thing. Okay, so now what we have to do is, the second parameter is the fields parameter, right? I'll show you how this field parameter also works, but for the timing let's send this empty. And the third parameter will be this pagination object. Let's send pagination. Okay, now let's see if the server is running already. Yes, server is running. Currently I'm not sending anything. If you make a request, then we are getting the details of all the PVRs, right? Now let's say I will send a key limit, and let's say I will send 5, and if you send it, you can see this is the first record, this is the second record, third record, fourth record, and fifth record. we are only getting 5 records. This is something really good, right? So we are able to put limit. We are able to put limit here. Similar to limit, we can say if data parameter is present and we have a skip parameter inside it, we can say pagination dot skip is equals to data dot skip, right? So now if let's say we start sending a skip parameter, and let's say we want all the theaters but not the first, like we want to only show, let's say, 5 per page, 5 theaters per page. So if we will send skip like this, it is going to get us the next 5 records, right? But now let's say this is like, this can be page number 2, right? On page number 2 we can send the next 5 records, but on page number 3 we have to skip 10 records and then send the next 5, like from 11th to 15th record we have to send. So this can be done in 2 ways. Either the front end tells us that how many records to skip, or the front end tells us what is the page number, right? If front end tells us what is the page number, then we can have a defined value that how many records we have to send per page, right? And based on that we can actually calculate things on the back end only. So let's assume that we are going to get a per page kind of a thing. So let's say let per page is equals to, if we have data dot per page, that means in the query params only we got how many records per page we have to send, then we will set it as data dot per page, otherwise we'll set it as 5. And then in pagination dot skip, actually in the skip parameter we will be then getting what page we are at. So we will say data dot skip into per page, right? Now if you will see in this skip, now we are going to send the page number. So let's say if we go to page number 2, then we should get the same records, PVR, Rivoli and all. Okay, let's see. So we are getting limit 5 and skip as 2. We are only getting 1 record. Let's see why. So we got the per page data, right? This is 5. Okay, so I guess we only have 11 records. So let's make per page data as 3. Let's make for the timing per page data as 3. So technically if we send page number 1, we should get the first 3 records, right? Okay, let's do one thing. Let's first of all see all the records. Okay, so you can see these are all the records. Now we'll put a limit of 5 records, or let's say we'll put a limit of 3 records, and we want to skip no record, right? That is page number 1, we are not going to skip any record, that should be 0. If you send it, so you can see we are getting the first 3. Then if you put page number 1, then we are getting the next 3, PVR Logics to PVR Rivoli. Then if you do page number 2, then we are going to get the next 3. And if we do page number 3, so we will get only 2 records because there are only 11 records. So this is how we are doing. So let's write it. For first page, we send skip as 0. Right, so skip is going to tell us the page number, and in the per page value we already have how many records per page we are going to have. That will be kind of like the limit that we are going to set, right? Now if you will carefully analyze, if pagination.limit is there, then this per page value is actually the limit only. So we don't need to specifically send per page. We can say data.limit. If data.limit is there, then use data.limit, otherwise use 3. And using just this limit and skip property, we have implemented our pagination, right? So if you want to repeat, what I have done is, using this limit property, you will be able to limit how many records you are sending. Using the skip property, you will be able to define how many records to skip, right? Now, if let's say I put 0 in the skip, it is not going to skip any record, but we want to consider it as a page, right? So if somebody puts skip as 1, that means we want to go to the second page, right? Zero based indexing, so second page. In second page, we should have skipped 3 records and start from the 4th record. So that's why on the second page, we will say data.skip is 1 and per page value is 3. So 1 into 3, 3. So we are going to skip 3 records. When data.skip will be 2, that is we want to go to the 3rd page, we want to skip 6 records. So data.skip will be 2, per page value will be 3. So 2 into 3 will be 6. This is how we are going to do the things, right? And we have successfully implemented our logic for pagination. So let's just quickly commit this. Added pagination for theater listing. Git push origin. And that's it. So our pagination functionality is technically done. Till now, we have done a lot of work on the theater resource, right? In the CRUD part, if you will carefully analyze, if you go to the routes, we have the create ready with us, we have the read ready with us, we have the delete ready with us. The only thing left to do is the update part. That is, we should be able to update our theaters. Like currently, any user can update the theater, but later we are going to give the functionality that only the client who is the owner of the theater should be able to update the theater. This is something that we have to do, right? So we are going to write a function for updating the theaters, and that should do our work, right? So if you talk about the signature of the API, the signature of the API is going to be pretty straightforward. We are going to have a route that will be something like /MBA /API /v1/theaters, and we are going to put a theater ID. We are going to identify a unique theater using this ID, and whatever is the theater, we are going to update properties of that theater. The type of the request is going to be put, right? We have already discussed about the fact that we can use patch in order to show partial update, and we can use put to show complete update. So both of the things we can implement. Put /patch, we will be implementing both of them for the time being. The request body, one second. So the request body will be having all the data of the theaters. For example, the name of the theater, pin code, description, and so on and so forth. These things are going to be present in the request body, right? And in the response body, we are going to have a success parameter, we are going to have an error parameter, a data parameter, and a message, just consistent to what we have been doing till now. In the success parameter, you will be able to identify whether the API completed itself successfully or not. In the error parameter, we will be able to identify whether there was any error or not. The data parameter will be having the corresponding data of the update once the update goes successfully, otherwise it will be empty. And the message parameter is going to be dependent on the situation of the request. It will be dependent on whether the request went successfully or not. Based on that, we will be having custom messaging. So that being said, having this signature with us, let's just try to build the overall API, right? So let's go to the code base. In the code base, first of all, let's just come to the service, right? In the service, we can write one more function, that is const update theater. In order to update the theater, we are going to get a theater ID and a data object based on which we have to do the update, right? What we are going to do is we will bind it inside a bunch of try catch, and we say const response is equals to await theater dot find by ID and update. So we are going to pass the ID based on which we have to find the theater, right? And then we are going to pass the data based on which will be having actually the parameters which we are going to update, and we are going to return the response, right? We have already discussed in the previous modules that this find by ID and update or find one and update, these kind of functions by default don't return the updated object. They are going to return you the old object. If you want to get the updated object, you have to pass a custom object later as well, and you can say new true. The moment you will put new true, it will start returning the new updated data, right? If you will not put this new true, it will return the old data. It will actually update it. It will actually update the record, but it will not return the updated record. It will return the old record. If you want to actually update the record and return also the updated record, you need to pass new true. And while updating, if you want to make sure all the validations are again getting checked, you need to put a parameter run validators as true. Okay, so this is something that we have to do, right? This is something that we have to do, new true and run validators true. Otherwise, if there was any validation error, we will be catching those validation error here. So we'll say if error dot name is equals to validation error, that means we encountered a validation error, right? Let's see. So we are going to just use a similar thing just like this, right, to get all the validations error. So we'll say let error will be an empty object. We're going to apply a loop on the keys of error dot errors, and then on this array we are going to iterate, and we'll say error of key is equals to error dot errors of key dot message, right? This is going to be there. We are going to do we are going to return this error object and a code as 422, that is validation error will be there. Otherwise we are going to throw the error. Whatever error we got, that is most probably an internal server error, we are going to throw it, right? Okay, now we are going to return update theater. We are going to return the update theater service. We'll go to the controller. We are going to write a new controller, const update, right? It is going to get the HTTP request object, HTTP response object, again a bunch of try catch. We'll do console.log error, and we are going to return rest.status 500.json error response body, and in the error response body we are going to set the error as let's see, error, this error object. Okay, and then here we can do const response is equals to await. We'll call the theater service dot update theater. The ID we are going to get in request dot params dot ID, and in request dot body we are going to get the parameters to update. Then in the success response body dot data we are going to put the response, and we are going to say return rest dot status 200.json success response body. We are going to set a custom message also, successfully updated the theater, and that's it. We are going to return this update here, right? We'll go to routes and we'll register a new route, app.patch. We'll make first of all a patch request /mba/api/v1/theaters/:id, and we'll say theater controller dot update. Okay, so now we have our API registered. Now let's do one thing. Let's take this ID and try to update the description here. So in the body for this particular theater, I'm putting a patch request and I want to update the theater description. If you send it, You can see the theater description is changed here, and if you check the database as well, refresh, the theater status is updated. Now what will happen if the ID that we are passing doesn't exist? If you send it, it says successfully updated the theater. Now it's the same problem that we have already encountered while this request find by ID. That is, if the response is not present, like you are not able to find any record with the corresponding ID, you will say no theater found for the given ID, right? And in the controller also, we are going to handle it like this, right? That is, the error will be the corresponding error and the code will be 404 not found. Now if you will try to update a theater which is not present, it is going to give you 404 not found, right? Okay. And for a complete update, we can also register one more route that is just going to be a put, right? So if you want to completely update the object, you can use the put API in order to update it, right? And that's it. So let's just quickly commit all of this. Added update API. Get push, right? So we have successfully completed our update API, right? And technically speaking, we are done with the theater resource as well. We have done a lot. There will be few minor changes that we will be doing to both the movie resource and the theater resource later in terms of validation checks and other things. But as a starter, this theater resource is definitely a good to go. We have implemented most of the things and even manually tested them. In the further upcoming set of parts, we are going to extend our functionality where we will try to combine movies and theater so that we are able to list movies on a theater, and we will also put some extra validation checks. We are going to introduce authentication and authorization and the booking mechanism as well in the later upcoming parts. So I hope the overall logic on how to implement this whole theater resource is clear to everyone, which we have discussed in the past few parts, and we are going to meet soon in the next upcoming parts. Already discussed our basic setup for the movie booking application. Till now we are done with the movie resource completely. We have completed the CRUD for the movie resource, right? If you will go to the code base, you can see for the movie resource we have the whole CRUD almost ready, right? We were building the CRUD for theater resource. For the theater resource, we are done with the create request, the delete request, the get particular theater, that is get a theater by a particular ID, and get all theaters. These requests are done. We are yet to complete our update request, and in this particular part we want to make some concrete changes in the corresponding get request. We will be introducing filters. I'll give you the use case, but this is something that we have done till now, right? So now let's just talk about the agenda of this video, or like let's say this part. So what we can say is, whenever a user wants to list all the theaters, then we might need to provide them certain filters. So let's just see what I'm talking about. So if you will go to the application of Book My Show, okay, if you'll go to Book My Show, the moment you will open it, you can see by default it is opening Bengaluru for me. That is the location for me, right? If I will open this in incognito, right? If I will open it in incognito, then before even we are going to enter in the application, it is actually asking us to filter the city. That is, you want shows or whatever activities you want to do, for which city you want to do. For example, if I will select Delhi NCR, you can see for the corresponding URL changed /explore /home /national capital region NCR, right? So this is something that is there. That means that at any point of time when the user comes to our application, in most of the cases they would not like to see all the theaters, right? Like all the movies and all the theaters throughout the country, like whatever we have in the database, we technically the user might not be interested in that, right? The user might be interested in the theaters of a particular city, or even more precise, the theaters of a particular pin code, right? This kind of filter the user might be more interested in, right? So just like book my show, the user of our app might not be interested in getting theaters, let's say all the theaters present in our database, right? So just like book my show BMS, we would like to introduce custom filters in our get all theaters API, so that based on the requirement, the user can filter out the corresponding theaters. Okay, corresponding theaters. So we need to technically build up a filter functionality. When we talk about a filter kind of functionality, that means we are going to have a set of data, right? We'll be having some set of data, and we are going to filter the data so that after filtration we get some subset of data. So based on our requirement, from this set we will filter out a subset, right? When we talk about a filter, technically and generally speaking, filter is generally a condition, right? So all those data pointers which are going to satisfy this condition are going to be the part of the subset that we are going to choose, and all those data pointers which are not going to satisfy the condition of this filter are not going to make it to the subset of the data that we are going to use. So this is generally a functionality of a filter, right? Now if we carefully analyze, in the previous set of implementation we already have a service which is helping us to get all the theaters, right? Now in this service maybe we can try to modify something so that we can try to put up a filter. Now there are two ways. One way is that once we fetch all the theaters and store it in the response object, at this response variable, then on this variable we can try to put a loop, or we'll try to make a filter. We already know that we can have filter kind of functionality, and based on that filter we can filter out the results, right? This will be something that we have to do manually, like we have to manually code it, and whenever the request will be sent to this get all theaters, it will make a call to the DB and then store the data. It like if our app will grow to quite some scale, then this data can be very huge. On this data, we have to manually put up the filters. So our servers will be manually, like our application server on which this whole app is running, that will be manually putting the filtration kind of a thing. This is one way, but this can be tedious and we have to do a lot of efforts for that. And maybe there can be sometimes a bit of load on the application server as well. So what's the other way? So generally databases help us to filter data, right? Databases provide us functionality so that we can filter out data. Now in our case, the database that we are using is MongoDB. And from our Express application, in order to connect MongoDB, we are actually using a ODM, right? Object Document Mapper. That is this kind of a thing, theater.find, right? Now, ODM that we are using is Mongoose, and Mongoose also helps us to apply filters. So what we will be doing, when we'll be fetching the data from the database, we are not going to fetch everything. If there is a filter that is expected to be applied, we are going to apply the filter directly on the database and we will just directly get a subset of data. So technically whatever processing is to be done, that is going to be done by the database server, right? And our application server is not going to get that much amount of load. That is something really very important. So if you will carefully see, we are currently using theater.find and we have put this curly brace, right? Let's see if the server is running. Yes, server is running. If you will send it, then you are getting all the I would say theater results. Now in this find, currently this object is an empty object. If you will try to like read in the documentations about this empty object, right? So you can see in the find function, you can put kind of like an object, right? This object is empty. If in this object you will put some key value pairs, right? Then based on that key value pair, filtration will be done by Mongoose, right? So let's write about it. Mongoose has a find function which expects expects a JavaScript object as the input parameter, right? Mongoose has a find function which expects a JS object as an input parameter. If object is empty, then find function returns all the data, and that is currently what it is doing, right? That is currently what it is doing. It is returning all the data because object is empty. Otherwise, if object is not empty, then based on the key value pair, right? Based on the key value pairs present in the object, Mongoose does filtration. Mongoose does filtration on the database. Right. So if we will pass some custom key value pairs, then based on those pairs, Mongoose is going to do the filtration. And how it does it? The key is generally the attribute name of the document of the collection, right? So if you will see, then this is a collection that is theaters collection, and this is one document. Now when you pass a key value pair in the find in the object that is passed as an argument to find, then in the key we will put one of the attributes, for example name, description, city, id, anything, and in the value we are going to put a value for this, and in the value of the pair we put some custom value. uh, um, we put some custom value to it, and then all those documents with all those documents with given keys and having the corresponding values are found, right? Then we return that data, right? So the key is going to be mapped to the attributes, and whatever documents are having those keys with the corresponding values as the attribute value, those data pointers are going to get filtered, right? And this is our agenda as well, right? So that everything can be done on the database side. Okay. Now, if you will carefully see, all we have to do is we have to prepare a kind of like an object which is going to have the key value pairs corresponding to it, and based on those key value pairs we actually need to like write this object such that it is having key value pairs if provided by the user. So this is something that we have to do, right? So we will do it in step-by-step manner. First of all, we need some more theaters as our database because we need wide variety of data so that we will be able to filter it. So we will first add some data pointers in the theater resource using the create API. Once we have added like 10-12 theaters, then we are going to first of all see that how the request will look like how the backend will identify that whether the user wants all the theater or they want to provide some filter based on location or maybe some filter based on pin code, something like that. We'll try to talk about the signature of it, and then we will start the coding implementation. So step by step we will try to decipher the problem and things should be fine. So without any further delay, let's just start. Now what we are going to do is we are going to use our post request, right? That was our create API slash MBA slash API slash v1 slash theaters with a post request in order to create more, I would say, theaters, right? I'll be continuously searching on the internet for few theaters so that we have few theaters in a particular pin code and few theaters in a particular city, right? So that we can actually filter them out correspondingly, right? So this is something that we want to do, right? So um, let's just start. So I know names of few of the famous theaters, right? So let's do that. uh, Let me just google it. Okay. Just a second. Okay, so let's just start. So the first one we are putting is um, Luke's Cinemas, right? You can say Luke's Cinemas, and we can just put a kind of like a random description here, right? This activity is also important so that we have some database ready with us, right? So this description I'm putting, okay. Then this is in Chennai, right? So we'll put the city as Chennai, right? And let's see the pin code. This is this pin code. I'm just getting things from the internet, right? And I'll copy the address here. Okay, this is the address. I'll send the request, and we have one more cinema with us. Okay. Okay, so we have one more cinema hall with us. Then let's add one more cinema hall. So this one is, let's add for Bangalore. So okay, so let's start. So this is Urvashi Theatre. And let's put this as the description. Let's put the pin code. I'll copy the address and copy pin code from here, and the city is Bengaluru. Send. And I believe we have one more theater with us. Let's just refresh. Now we have three theaters. Makes sense, right? Let's add one more. Right, so let's add PVR Logics Noida. The city will be Noida, of course. And let's get the address. This is the pin code. Okay, I'll keep the description same for the time being. Let's send it. And we have one more movie hall that works, right? So now we have different movie halls technically in different cities. We have New Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, Noida. Now what I'm going to do is I'll be adding few movie halls from the corresponding city so that we can try to test our filters for the cities, right? So let me add few movie halls from New Delhi. So we have PVR Plaza, right? Let's add the data. So this is PVR Plaza. This is the address. This is the pin code, and this is the city name, New Delhi. I believe previously also we have done this. That works. Send. We have one more movie hall with us, right? And let's do one thing. This movie hall that we have added is in a particular place of New Delhi. So let's try to see if we have more halls in a similar place so that we can have some halls with a corresponding pin code as well. So let me just check. Yes, so we have one more movie hall, PVR Rivoli. The pin code is same, just the address is different. So this is going to be helpful. So now you can see pin code is same, address is different. Address different, pin code is same, and of course if the pin code will be same, the city will be same. That is of course same. So we'll send it. So now we have two entries with same pin code. That's good. Let's add one more. Let's have let's add Odeon Cinema. Again pin code is same. Let's just change the address. I'll add a new description also here. I'm getting this data from Google. You can just easily Google it. This activity again we are doing so that we can have testing data. So refresh, we have Odin also with us now, makes sense, right? So now for a particular pin code we have this. Let's do it for one more pin code maybe. So let's do it like let's add one more, that is Cinepolis DLF Avenue, right? Let's add a new description. This time pin code will be different. So change the address, copy the pin code, paste the pin code, and we have a new one from Saket area, I believe. And let's have one more. Okay, so we got one more. So this is PVR select city walk. Let's have the new address. Rest everything should remain same. You can see pin code is same. Send. We have one more. So for Saket area also we have now 2-3 I would say like movie halls, theaters. Let's add one more for Bengaluru. Let's search for it. So this is Inox Leisure. This is here. The new pin code and the city should be Bengaluru. Okay, let's add one more last for Bengaluru. This is PVR Aura, and this is the address. This is the pin code. We'll store the pin code, send, and that's it. So now we have ample amount of data in our database, right? You can also Google some theaters which are in similar pin like same pin code, and some which are in same city, so that we can have our filter data ready with us. So we have a bunch of movie halls now. If you'll see, we have a bunch of movie halls. Currently what happens is, if let's say if we make a get request for API/v1/theaters, then all the theaters will get listed. You can see in this data property we have an array, which is an array of objects, and all the theaters are getting listed, right? This is something that is happening. Now what do we want? We want to set up filters using which we will be able to filter out the exact data that we want to have, right? Nothing more, nothing less. So let's see. So we will one by one try to set up the filter, but first of all let's just try to think that how exactly the routing will look like, how exactly the route will look like on which the user will send the request, because currently on this route how our backend will be able to understand the user wants to put some filters or not. So let's see. So let's say we can have a situation where we want to filter the theaters based on city. Let's go step by step. So we can have /mba /API/v1/theaters, and now we want to filter the theaters based on a city. Generally filters are not provided as body params or URL params. Instead they are provided as query params. So technically in the query params, how do you put query params? You put a question mark, and then you put, let's say, city is equals to some city, right? This can be a way. So whenever we have to use whenever we have to use query params, we don't need to manually define a new route for them, right? Whatever is behind this question mark will be treated as the route. whatever you put after the question mark in your route will be treated technically as parameters or params, right? So technically, we do not need to register a new route. On the route where we are getting all the theaters, on this route only, we will be able to implement filters, as I said. So let's write about it. For query params in a route, or let's say for query params, we don't need different routes, right? So technically what happens is, maybe because there can be multiple filter parameters, for example for a particular city, then for a particular pin code we want to have some data, right? So there can be multiple filter parameters, there can be 10-20 filters also. I'm just giving a use case, so we cannot like build 20 different routes, right? And there will be having some combinations also, like city and pin code can come together, they can come individually also. So we cannot build that many routes. So we can write, due to excess amount of combinations that can occur, due to query params, we cannot define so many routes. So the query params are considered differently, and the route will be the route accept them, right? So what I'm trying to say is that these query params, like let's say you have city and then you can do and pin code equals to the corresponding pin code, right? So this and separated query params are not considered part of the route directly. Whenever we have to route a request to a particular route, we will put this route /mba/api/un/theaters, and there will be a type of the request, of course. So the type of the request will be get, we are fetching the information. Now whatever is present after it, we can handle it separately in the controllers, because just like controllers get access to the request body and the URL params, similarly they get access to the query params also. So these can be handled there. And then the type of the request is going to be get. The request object, we don't need it for the time being, right? Request object will be empty because all the data that we need in order to filter the corresponding set of theaters is already present in the query params, right? We don't need any request body request object, or let's say body param separately in order to actually send it. And then response that we are going to send is going to have a success parameter that is going to tell us whether the API was successfully completed or not, that we were able to hit it or not. Then there will be error parameter. This will be empty if no error occurred. Then there will be a data parameter, that is if any error occurred, then this data parameter is going to be empty. If no error occurred, then this data parameter is going to have the data. And the message based on the fact that whatever custom I would say application you are building, based on that let's say you are working on the front end back end, depending on that or whatever use case or error you are working on, the messages can be different, so we don't need to bother a lot about that, right? So this is going to be the overall request object, response object, type of the request, and the route of the request for us. Now based on this, we need to start implementation, and I would say that we should start step by step. Now the thing is, we already have the routes registered. All we have to do is we have to take a look at the service and the controller. Let's come to the service first. Okay. Now in the service, you can see we are actually passing an empty object. Let's just not do that now. We'll say let query is equals to an empty object, and here we will pass query. And now in the get all theaters function, we can even get an optional parameter that is going to be data, right? That is going to be data. So inside data, if the data is not empty, like the data object is not empty, it is going to actually contain the I would say key value pairs based on which you can do the filtering. If it is empty, then you need to return all the results. Okay. So sometimes even data might not be given to you as well. So now we have to start doing some checks, right? We need to first of all check that if you want to apply a filter of a city, we need to first of all check whether the filter city was actually passed in the URL params or not, right? This is something important. So let's instead of okay, let's keep it like this. So we'll say if data, that is data was not null, and data dot city, that is the city parameter is present in the data. What we are going to do, we are going to say query dot city is equals to data dot city, right? Irrespective of the fact that whether you have a city or not. If you have a city in like a city key value pair, that is key is city, value is the some city name. If you're passing that, then we are going to add that same city name and then city value in our query object. If there will be no data.city, like if there will be no city parameter in the data, this if check will not execute and this query object will remain empty and you will fetch all the theaters. But if the data that is sent by the controller, it is having some values and one of the key value pair is city, then we need to put the fact that the user specifically wants answer for a specific city. So we will check whether data is not null or undefined or not, and then we'll check that okay, we are having a key value pair with the key as city, and we are setting the key with the value data.city, right? So this type of filter we have started to prepare, and now what happens is the query object also gets a new city property with the city value, right? So that's why passing query here makes sense, right? Now let's just see. Server is running perfectly fine. What we have to do is in the theater controller, let's do one thing. Let's always pass request.query. If the request query is empty, then also we are handling it in the service. If it is not empty, it is having some properties, then also we are handling it in the service. Now what we can do is we can say get request. And how can you put query params in the URL? You can use this params tab here and you can put the key value pairs, right? Okay, so now we want to filter based on a city. You can see city is a parameter there, and we want all the theater of city New Delhi. Let's see. First of all, let's try to send without city. We send it and all the theaters are coming, right? You can see all the theaters are coming. Now if I put as value city, so you can see after question mark you have city is equals to New Delhi, so it will automatically add a query param for you. So if you try to send it, then you can see all the details that we are getting, the city is New Delhi only, nothing more, nothing less. We are getting 5-6 entries approximately, and all the entries are of New Delhi. Whereas if you will turn this value off, and then we will be able to get all the theaters. So this is somehow I would say interesting, but technically speaking, we have implemented our first filter, that is city. We are able to filter out data based on the city. So let's do Chennai. I guess there is only one entry for Chennai, and you can see there is only one entry for Chennai. And for Bengaluru, you can see we added, I guess, 3-4. Okay, we added 3. So we have 3 theaters for Bengaluru, and we are only getting those theaters. So this is something really very powerful, and using the same approach we are going to extend our, I would say, conversation for the other filters, right? That is for price. no, I guess not price, pin code and all. Okay. So without any further delay, let's just jump there and see what all other filters we can actually put in our corresponding API.